Stories of possession are a dime a dozen, and a tale as old as time, or at the very least, as old as recorded history transcribes. There are several stories, anecdotes, or news articles online that claim an individual was possessed by some supernatural entity, and they had no control over their bodies, nor their actions. The worst case scenario often happens. The alleged possessed individual harms someone else, and they blame their actions on the possession. Perhaps the most famous case where demonic possession was used as a claim for innocence was the case of Cheyenne Johnson, the case that inspired The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. To be incredibly brief, on November 24th, 1981, Johnson was convicted of manslaughter after they stabbed their landlord, Alan Bono. The crime was a brutal one, and many on the case described it as one of the worst single killings they've ever seen. In court, Johnson cited that they weren't in control of their actions, that they were possessed. The devil made them do it. Rightfully so, Johnson's defense was turned down in court, and they were sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison for manslaughter. The case would go down in history as the first case in the United States where a defendant would actually cite demonic possession as a defense for the killing of an individual. However, it wouldn't be the last. Horrifically, similar defenses would be made all around the world, not just in the United States. One such case happened not terribly long ago either, in 2013. On Christmas Day, 2013, in Edinburgh, Scotland, a woman would murder her neighbor and claim that she could not be held responsible for her actions, as she was possessed by the archangel Gabriel himself. On December 25th, 2013, in Edinburgh, Scotland, Alan Williamson would be stabbed to death by his own neighbor. On what should have been a peaceful and cheerful holiday, Williamson would unfortunately be killed by his 37-year-old neighbor, Melissa Young. She apparently attacked Williamson after he had rejected her Christmas presents, a pair of unisex trainers, shoes, and a copy of the Sun newspaper's 2014 calendar. She seemingly went berserk soon after his rejection. Her kind demeanor she first approached him with would soon devolve to a cold stare and callous attitude. In a state of unbridled and unprovoked anger, she stabbed him 29 times. She was arrested soon thereafter. The police found her at Glenyard Lone Flat, Williamson's residence, where she was convicted of manslaughter. When police arrived on the scene, she simply stood over Williamson's body, her hands covered in blood, quite literally caught red-handed. Her trial would be held not long after her initial arrest, and it was there that she pleaded guilty of killing Williamson, but could not be held accountable for the murder. Abnormality of the mind, as she put it. In other words, she claimed she could not be held responsible for the killing because she was not in control of her body. In fact, she actually claimed that she was possessed by Gabriel, the archangel of biblical myth. She said to the court that right before she stabbed Williamson 29 times, she saw a bright light and heard voices in her head telling her to effectively give up her body. In that moment, she claims that the archangel Gabriel possessed her body and used her as God's instrument to deliver divine justice upon the world. More specifically, to punish the unclean demon, the innocent Alan Williamson. The defense attorney present would argue that she should not be held accountable for the murder, not on the grounds of possession, but on the grounds of insanity. Jim Keegan, the defending attorney at the trial, said during his closing speech that mental health professionals claim that his client was prone to violent and dangerous outbursts. Outbursts she apparently had no control of. He preceded this with, "This can only have been a frenzied and savage attack. It's a very tragic case." In response to everything in the trial, Detective Inspector Grant Johnson had the following to say: "Melissa Young carried out a violent attack on her neighbor, and the severity of the injuries inflicted led to his death. Officers in attendance quickly detained Young, and at no time was there ever any risk to the other members of the public, although this incident did shock the local community. The length of the sentence handed down today reflects the violent nature of this offense." Throughout the entirety of the trial, Young displayed no kind of remorse towards Williamson's murder, and so the court sentenced her for manslaughter, and she is to serve at least 20 years before she could even apply for parole. The presiding judge of the trial, Judge Lord Boyd, told Young, "Having murdered him, you set about trying to persuade health professionals that you are suffering from diminished responsibility. While it's true that you have a severe personality disorder, it's clear it played no part in what happened that night. You showed no remorse. In fact, you told this court that you were indifferent to his death." As for the defendant, the only thing worthwhile she really had to say in regards to the whole case and subsequent trial was that if Williamson had accepted her gifts, she would not have stabbed him.